The sixth commandment is so universally accepted that it should go without saying, but it doesn't, and for good reason. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, August 1st, 2022. We're used to hearing the sixth commandment in the language of the old King James Bible, "Thou shalt not kill." But does the commandment rule out all forms of killing, or is it more specific than that? The sixth commandment is one of the shortest commandments. In Hebrew, it is just 2 words. No hemming or hawing, just straight to the point and seemingly without wiggle room. But if the commandment is a blanket prohibition against taking human life in any form, why is there so much killing in the Bible? Not just in war, but the laws of the Old Testament even include capital punishment for certain kinds of offenses, though we moderns cringe at some of these. But putting aside our modern distaste for the use of capital punishment for some of the crimes listed, the point is that the Bible does envision times and situations when taking human life is justifiable. So what does the sixth commandment really mean? Well, the majority of more modern versions of the Bible translate the word as murder rather than the blanket term kill. The New Revised Standard Version, which I routinely use, says, "You shall not murder." The Message translation is even more succinct, hewing very close to the original Hebrew, "no murder." The root idea here is consistent with the commandments to keep Sabbath and to honor one's elders. That is, that human life is precious and not to be abused or tossed aside lightly. But it doesn't mean that taking a human life is never justified. Or, at any rate, one cannot simply stretch this commandment to prohibit any taking of human life. For in its original context, it was simply more focused on otherwise unjustifiable taking of life, especially by one individual against another. Now, one can certainly build a case that taking any life is wrong, but not on the basis of this commandment alone. Which begs the question, of course, when is taking the life of another justifiable, and when is it unjustifiable? Legal codes have struggled with that one for centuries. Many, if not most legal codes, recognize shades of differences in the taking of human life. In our own country, we recognize gradations all the way from involuntary manslaughter to capital murder. And even within manslaughter, there is voluntary and involuntary. Involuntary manslaughter is when a person dies because of our negligence. Voluntary manslaughter is when we intentionally kill someone but were provoked to do it, perhaps in self-defense. Capital murder, on the other hand, or murder that brings with it the possibility of the death penalty, is usually reserved for what we might call cold-blooded or premeditated murder committed during the act of some other serious crime. So even murder involves more than just meets the eye. We can usually distinguish between gradations of seriousness with regard to taking human life, but at the end of the day, it is still murder in one form or another, and it is still serious. Distinguishing between levels of seriousness is really something we do to make sure that the punishment fits the particular crime, but it is still a crime, however we judge its seriousness. All of this to say, human life is precious. As we've seen, it is precious because human beings bear the image of God within them. And even sin, no matter how heinous, does not fully erase God's image within us. It means that life ultimately belongs to God. From an Old Testament perspective, there were times and situations that justified the taking of the life of another, but these were reserved for serious cases. Bottom line, murder. Don't do it. When we return tomorrow, the uncomfortable subject of adultery. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.